In this class, we'll discuss two important diseases of joints. The first one is infectious arthritis, and the second is crystal induced arthritis. Let's start with infectious arthritis. It basically is infection of joints and commonly occurs through either a direct spread or through a spread from the blood. Something similar to what we saw in osteomyelitis. The problem with infectious arthritis is that it can cause destruction of the joint very fast and it can lead to permanent deformities of joints. There are four important types of infectious arthritis, namely suppurative arthritis, which is caused by a multitude of bacteria. Then there is mycobacterial arthritis, which is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. There is Lyme arthritis caused by Borrelia burgdorferi, and viral arthritis caused by viruses such as parvovirus B19, rubella, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C viruses. HIV per se does not cause an arthritis. The mechanisms involved in arthritis in patients of HIV are quite complex and not due to the virus itself. The important type of arthritis, as far as your exams are concerned, is suppurative arthritis, and we'll discuss that. Suppurative arthritis is a subtype of infectious arthritis, like we just saw, and it is caused by bacterial infections. Usually, the portal of entry in suppurative arthritis is blood, that is hematogenous route. Some special features are there for this suppurative arthritis. Less than 2 years of age population, the causative agent commonly is Haemophilus influenzae. In older children and adults, the most common organism which is causing the suppurative arthritis will be Staphylococcus aureus. In late adolescence and young adulthood, particularly in women and patients with complement factor deficiencies, the causative organism is Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and in sickle cell anemia patients, the causative organism is Salmonella. Remember, this is true even for osteomyelitis. In osteomyelitis in sickle cell anemia, common organism causing the osteomyelitis would be Salmonella. S for S. Well, not Staphylococcus, but Salmonella. The patients of suppurative arthritis will present with symptoms most commonly will be seen in the knee joint. However, it can also affect hip joint, shoulder, elbow and wrist. Multiple joints may be involved since the portal of entry is blood. Classical presentation is suddenly they'll complain of pain and swelling in the joints. They can have fever and there is restriction of joint mobility. For the diagnosis of suppurative arthritis, joint examination is very important. The joint will be tender, it will be inflamed reddish, and swelling will be there. Blood investigations, if you do high WBC count and high ESR, will be there. Also true for osteomyelitis. Synovial fluid aspirated from the joint will show numerous neutrophils. So the condition we are dealing with is suppurative arthritis. Suppuration itself means formation of pus. So in microscopy you will get lots of neutrophils, and it is an exudate. So exudate means proteins will naturally be high in it. You can also send the synovial fluid for culture and sensitivity for the isolation of bacteria and to decide which antibiotic to use. Here is a representative image showing a needle that is getting into the knee joint above patella. and it is aspirating synovial fluid. The name for this procedure is arthrocentesis. And in suppurative arthritis, this synovial fluid, if you stay in it and see under microscope, you'll get numerous neutrophils and occasionally a few synoviocytes also you may be able to see. Histopathologically, if you get the specimen of synovium in suppurative arthritis, again the same picture you'll be seeing. Numerous neutrophilic infiltrations will be there. In the image, the blue colored arrows are pointing at some of the neutrophils, and the cell that the red arrow is pointing to, that is the synoviocyte, which is lining the synovium. Moving to the next set of topics, which is crystal induced arthritis. Crystals are associated with various types of joint diseases. It could be acute or it could be chronic. The problem with this crystal induced arthritis is that the crystals will cause increased cytokine production from the inflammatory cells, leading to destruction of the articular cartilage. Crystals that are responsible for this crystal induced arthritis could either be from within the body or it could be an external agent. The agents which are produced within the body are called endogenous crystals. A classic example, monosodium urate and calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate or CPPD. The first one is MSU, the second one is CPPD. The crystals which are introduced to the body from outside are called exogenous crystals, and examples include corticosteroid ester, methyl methacrylate, silicone and polythene. So the last three exogenous crystals, they come from the material from which prosthetic joints are made. So if at all a patient has a knee replacement and a prosthetic joint is in place, these are all some of the materials from which that replaced joint is made of. And these materials can cause crystals, leading to crystal induced arthritis. The important and common type of crystal induced arthritis are the ones caused by endogenous crystals, namely monosodium urates and calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate. The type of crystal arthritis that is caused by monosodium urate crystals, the name given to it is gout or gouty arthritis. So gouty arthritis is a disease that is characterized by transient attacks of acute arthritis ending up in a chronic type of an arthritis. This is due to the crystallization of those monosodium urates within the joint, that is in the joint space, as well as around the joints in other structures such as ligaments, cartilage, tendons, etc. The monosodium urate crystals which cause this gout are derived from uric acid. So let us discuss in brief about uric acid metabolism. This uric acid is an end product of purine degradation. So what are the purines? Adenine and guanine. That will eventually, through subsequent steps, will give rise to uric acid. The detailed steps for production of uric acid from purine degradation we will not be discussing, as it will be out of purview for this topic. Once uric acid is formed, it reaches kidneys through blood. It is filtered by glomerulus, reabsorbed by proximal tubules, and later on secreted by the distal nephron and excreted into urine. So 10% of whatever is reabsorbed by the proximal tubule will be excreted into the urine to maintain a serum level of uric acid at around 6.8 higher limit. Naturally, for monosodium urate crystals to develop, there should be more uric acid. And how will we get more uric acid? The first thing is there should be more purine degradation, that is excessive production of urate, that is uric acid, or decreased excretion in the urine. So these two are the mechanisms by which a hyperuricemia is induced. Not every case of hyperuricemia will end up in gout, but these are some of the preliminary steps. Coming to the pathogenesis of gout, whenever there is increased production or decreased secretion, it can lead to precipitation of and formation of these crystals, that is monosodium urate crystals. There are multiple factors that influence the formation of these crystals. Those factors are, first is low temperature in peripheral joints. So it is observed that in patients having gout, preference for deposition of crystals is seen in peripheral joints. For example, small joints of the foot or wrist, like this. So the explanation given for that is there is low temperature in these peripheral joints, hence crystallization occurs. Then why only joints are involved more as compared to rest of the tissue? The reason for that is poor solubility of these crystals in synovial fluid. In blood, they'll easily be dissolved in a dissolved state. However, due to chemical features of synovial fluid, there is poor solubility for these crystals. Third one is, for any crystal to form, there should be one central nidus on top of which it will crystallize. So that nidus is formed by some types of proteoglycans in the joint and also some fragments of cartilage. In the previous slide, I told you that not all cases of hyperuricemia will develop into gout, right? So which are the scenarios in which hyperuricemia will eventually lead to gout? So 20 to 30 years after hyperuricemia starts, that is when gout will start manifesting. In heavy alcoholics, in obese patients, in patients consuming thiazide diuretics, and in patients having lead toxicity. So these are some of the conditions in which hyperuricemia will give rise to gout. Continuing with the pathogenesis, this disease gout is divided into two types. The first is called primary gout and the second type is called secondary gout. 90% and above cases of gout belong to the category of primary gout. Only 10% belong to secondary gout. Coming to the causes of primary gout, it is unknown in most cases. It is said that some type of mutation leading to defect of enzyme. However, the mutation or the enzyme are not identified properly as of yet. There is a small change here. In the old edition of Robbins, it was said that primary gout, most of the cases are because of increased production. In this edition, they have changed it. Most cases of primary gout, the mechanism is decreased excretion and not increased production. One known cause in primary gout is partial deficiency of hypoxanthine guanine phosphoriboside transferase enzyme, leading to increased production of uric acid. Earlier I told you that there are many steps in the formation of uric acid from purine metabolism, right? So in those steps there is something known as a salvage pathway. So when this HGPRT enzyme is responsible for that salvage pathway, in which the amount of uric acid formed is reduced. So whenever there is a deficiency of HGPRT enzyme, uric acid formed will be more. Coming to the causes of secondary gout, some causes are there like increased nucleic acid turnover, example leukemia, or some high-grade tumors which are being treated with chemotherapy. Because of the chemotherapy, tumor cells and their nuclei are being destroyed, and from nuclei the DNA material is there, right? From that purines are again destroyed, leading to excessive formation of uric acid. Other causes for secondary gout include CKD, that is chronic kidney disease. There is complete HGPRT deficiency, which is a cause for secondary gout. Lesch-Nyhan syndrome, then some drugs like thiazide diuretics. When there is chronic hyperuricemia for say about 20 to 30 years, what happens is this uric acid, it will undergo salt formation combining with sodium, leading to monosodium urate crystal formation. These crystals will go and deposit in some favorable places such as synovial fluid of joint. When that happens, local macrophages which are present in the knee joint, they will come and ingest these small crystals. When they ingest, there are some protein complexes within the macrophages called inflammasomes. These inflammasomes are activated and they will start releasing a certain set of chemokines, predominantly interleukin 1. There are other cyto and chemokines as well, but important one is interleukin 1 here. There also is release of leukotriene B4, prostaglandins and free radicals. So all these things, what they do is they recruit neutrophils. They attract neutrophils to that area. So neutrophils will come there, they will eat up some more crystals, they will die off, and when they die off, they'll further attract even more neutrophils. They'll release some lysosomal enzymes. Some proteases are also being released from macrophages. So all these mediators, what they will do is they'll cause tissue injury and inflammation. So this is how acute arthritis sets in cases of gout. We already saw that 20 to 30 years after development of hyperuricemia, patient will start having manifestations like acute arthritis in gout. Repeated attacks of acute arthritis for many years will happen, and eventually it will lead to what is known as a chronic tophaceous arthritis. After this chronic tophaceous arthritis, multiple tophi will be deposited in various sites. We'll see this in the coming slides, leading to severe damage of articular cartilage, reducing the function of the joint. That is, mobility is lost basically. Let's see the clinical features of gout or gouty arthritis. So initially, for certain number of years, there will be asymptomatic hyperuricemia. That is, the patient will have increased uric acid levels in his blood, that is serum. However, no symptoms will be there. After about 10 to 20 years, he'll start developing acute gouty arthritis. The manifestations of these acute gouty arthritis include painful joints which are warm and tender. After multiple episodes of acute arthritis for many years, say about 10 to 12 years, eventually the patient will start developing chronic arthritis and the deposition of multiple tophi. So what are these tophi now? So tophus is the term given for stone in Latin. So that has been introduced here. So tophi resemble stones basically. In the pathogenesis, we already saw that one factor that is important for crystallization is low temperature. So that is why peripheral joints were being affected. The common joints to be affected include, one is great toe, there is ankle, heel, knee and wrist joints. So these are some of the peripheral joints which are afflicted by this gouty arthritis. Let us now talk about the morphology, that is the appearance of gouty arthritis. So the first stage is acute arthritis. So in acute arthritis, there will be acute inflammatory cells, namely neutrophils. So if you aspirate the synovial fluid of patient suffering from acute gout, you will see under microscope that there are numerous neutrophils, and there are blue arrows pointing towards some white spaces. So those white spaces are nothing but the monosodium urate crystals. If a synovial membrane biopsy is taken at this point, you'll be seeing numerous neutrophils in the synovium. Apart from that, you may be able to see some crystals as well. The second stage, which is chronic tophaceous arthritis. Here what will happen is the monosodium urate crystals, they will form like a layer on top of the articular cartilage. They'll be thickened or hyperplastic synovial membrane with fibrosis. So this is what is called pannus. Pannus is, the literal meaning of pannus is a cloth which covers. So here there is fibrovascular tissue that is covering the articular cartilage, which is nothing but pannus. Also there will be inflammatory cells. Again here, if you do a synovial fluid aspiration and you look at it under the microscope, if you polarize it, you will be able to see urate crystals. So the shape of urate crystals is needle shaped and it is negatively birefringent under polarized light. The third stage is the formation of tophi or stone like substances at various sites, including cartilage. It could be articular cartilage or extra-articular cartilage, ligaments, tendons, and bursa. Under microscopy, tophi will be comprised of large aggregates of crystals surrounded by dense inflammation, including neutrophils, lymphocytes, plasma cells, and foreign body type of giant cells. So in the adjacent image, you are seeing pale pink color material pointed to by a red arrow. So that is the tophus, or the crystals which have formed like a colony together. And the blue arrow is pointing to a cell which has numerous nuclei haphazardly arranged in a common cytoplasm. So that is the foreign body type of giant cell. Below you are seeing gross images of tophi, what they look like. So clearly they are appearing like stones here. There is one name given for it clinically. This is called podagra, Podagra. The last stage in gout is gouty nephropathy, wherein kidneys are affected, leading to chronic kidney disease. Gout is now a treatable disease. There are numerous medications for it. Some examples are uricosuric family of drugs. There is one new drug called febuxostat, all those things. So gout can be managed very well with medications. Let us move on to the next important crystal-induced arthritis. The disease is pseudogout, and the type of crystal here is calcium pyrophosphate dehydrate. The synonym for this disease is chondrocalcinosis, and it is commonly seen in more than 50 years age group. And as age advances, the incidence of this disease also increases. Pseudogout could be either sporadic or hereditary or of a secondary type. The pathogenesis of pseudogout is not very well understood. However, germline mutations in pyrophosphate transport channel is said to be one of the causes for development of pseudogout. Some proteoglycans in the joint, which usually prevent crystallization, are said to be degraded because of these mutations, leading to precipitation of crystals. Clinically, this disease can be confused with osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis because of common set of symptoms, and about 50% of the patients having pseudogout will have considerable joint damage. Morphology wise, under microscope in histology, in gout we saw that the crystals were forming pale pink colonies, pale pink aggregates. In pseudo gout, the CPPD crystals, however, will be forming blue colored aggregates. There it was pink, here it is blue. Second thing is synovial fluid examination. There we saw that the crystals were needle shaped and long, thin and long, and they were negatively birefringent under polarized light. Here the shape of crystals of CPPD are rhomboid and they are positively birefringent in polarized light. Don't worry about the technicalities of polarized microscopy, not very important. To summarize, we discussed 3 topics today. The first was infective arthritis, in which we saw suppurative arthritis caused by bacteria. Then we saw gout, which is a crystal induced arthropathy because of monosodium urate crystals. And thirdly, we saw pseudogout, which is again a crystal induced arthropathy but caused by calcium pyrophosphate dehydrate crystals.